Thank you for returning for part 5 of Linda's lecture. The small clip you just reviewed is new footage of the UFO crash that happened on May 1st, 2023, from a different angle. If you're just joining us, the clip you just saw complements the discussion at the end of part 4 of Linda's lecture. Please go back and review it if you haven't seen it already. Scott Roeder, a testified crime scene analyst, decided to review the footage of Angel and his family going into their backyard when they heard the crash to investigate what happened. What he then reported to Newsmax using the latest analyst software in the clip you're about to review was nothing short of extraordinary. If you're like me and must know the truth about the alien UFO phenomena, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching The Storyist.
We can take a video and look at whether or not there is an artificial artifact added to it or not. And in this case, we can definitively say, to a degree of scientific certainty, that this entity, this thing in the video, is there in the physical reality in which the Kenmore family is also there. Like, this is so critical because you can clearly see through the slots in the fence that there is a leg motion moving from the right to the left side of the screen. And clearly it is behind there. So this isn't just like a head floating in space. This is a head of that is somehow that does not have full opacity, that the opacity of the head of the shadow is only at about 33% opacity versus a normal shadow, which would be at 100% opacity, or an object in the screen, which is at 100%. And this isn't anything that you did. It's just what you were able to determine, that this shadow being, or this being in the shadows, possibly creating its own shadow or smoky filter or cloaking technique, is not only cloaking itself from the people there, but cloaking itself from the camera itself, in that it's minimizing our ability to identify pixels inside of that shadow.
Nabu were Enlil and Enki. Nabu was son of Marduk and grandson of Enki, Ea of the Anunnaki. Nabu's grandfather, Ea, is the creator and protector of humanity because Ea created humans out of clay to be worker slaves for the Mesopotamian so-called gods. But the supreme god, Enlil, was irritated by the noise that humans made, apparently because we aren't telepathic and we have to talk out loud. So Enlil wanted to destroy Ea's human slave creation with a devastating flood because we were too noisy. But Ea realized what Enlil was up to and got a friend to build an ark so that humanity could escape God Enlil's act of annihilation. Professor Jeffers continues, the second word, rakbu, would be the noun rider, from the verb rakabu, to ride, frequently upon a horse or a chariot. The middle word could possibly be the word for the city of Larsa in southern Mesopotamia, written out phonetically. But the H hyphen is nonsensical for Sumerian and Akkadian, and this is puzzling. The fourth word, sanu, could be an infinitive of the verb to do again, or a second time, or even to be different and strange. The fifth word, ki, by itself can be Sumerian, and it would mean earth or land. Now, the meaning exactly remains unclear, but Sergeant CJ himself wonders if this is about the return of Nabu to Earth. We are waiting to see if he has any more telepathic downloads that might explain these Sumerian and Akkadian words. And just recently, we got a little bit, and all I'll do is just tell you. These were 0 and 1 translations on September 29th, October 3rd, October 9th, October 20th. These were just snatches he was able to write down. And here were the translations. Day of dark energy, until photon energy is mastered, enlarge. Photon energy is mastered. Squeeze, shrink, insert, charge, creator. Will stand aside, 14 guardians remain on. So it's less coherent, strange, and stranger. But here is one more look at everything that we've been able to translate outside of these bits that I just told you, from binary transmission, from this alien intelligence to Sergeant CJ, who has a very responsible job in the United States Army. June 30th, 2015, continuous protection of humanity, 49.27 north, 11.5 east, expose hidden knowledge to all citizens, advancement imperative for planetary survival. Beware of Orion 1350.3 and Z Reticuli 39.170. Avoid signal messages sent. October 2015 to January 2016. Imminent threat soon upon Earth's leaders and civilizations. Expose and disband hidden knowledge to all citizens. Employ safe and controlled joint study to all minds. Progression imperative for combined survival. Embrace this space vessel threat, the strange 12 light years. Ike's embedded citizens are ready, and more that don't make any sense. Royal Emerther warning, expose foreign technology to all. Evolutionary advancement needed to prevent takeover. Time machines, alien life trying to survive in interplanetary genetic missions, ET hybrids and clones, eons beyond us, as the MJ-12 documents say. Whistleblowers have reported that alien technologies can make their various spacecraft, androids, and other ET technologies invisible to human eyes. They can be anywhere around us on this planet at any time, in the sky, in the water, on the land, and we cannot see. This naval ship fading into invisibility is an October 2015 Northrop Grumman Facebook posting. In addition to invisibility, the extraterrestrial technology is described as functioning with self-activating software that can neutralize gravity and project three-dimensional holograms as camouflage that human eyes and minds cannot detect in the Earth. The alien goal, they say, is to harvest genetic material from this planet's animal and human life in order to create a large ongoing supply that you're looking at of rapid cycle cloned and hybridized body containers with very advanced technology that some people in the human abduction syndrome refer to as the resurrection tubes. And I'd like to underscore how important these illustrations that I'm showing you are, because I was contacted by a man who had worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency for 23 years. He said his job was to analyze and monitor the competing geopolitical territorial conflict of 3 different extraterrestrial civilizations on this planet. And he said, we thought that the rapid cycle cloning technology was one of our government's greatest secrets. And then I get a call that you have 110 pages in your book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. And I got the book, and I'm looking at drawings of our secret. I'm looking at maps of our secret. I am reading about all of these details, and I had to meet and ask you questions because it was so compartmentalized. That truly happened. This is very, very important. I first learned about the cloning tube technology the first week of March 1991 when I received in the mail a large envelope that contained an audio cassette, a letter, and several color drawings from a woman named Linda Porter. She was born in 1946 and began having memorable experiences with non-humans by age 12 in 1958. She had decided it was important to reach me after hearing a conference presentation I had given in California concerning eyewitness testimony about non-human intelligences interacting with our planet. She was concerned about her vulnerability as a person caught up in the human abduction syndrome and was frightened about the United States government's policy of hiding the alien presence. She's another who thought everybody should know and it might make a difference in protecting us rather than hurting us. Her letter began, quote, "We abductees are caught in the middle of a series of ongoing events that will one day prove to be historically significant to the future of the Earth. Unfortunately, because of our continuing non-voluntary interactions with these beings, we have, in a sense, become victims of both sides of the phenomena. On the one hand, we are used by the aliens for their own purposes, whatever those purposes may be. On the other, if we speak out, we risk ridicule from the public and in some cases possible harassment and or intimidation by government and military personnel. If you could look directly into these creatures' eyes, you'd realize that every detail of your life, no matter how personal, how mundane, how minute, is known to them. It makes me wonder, are we some sort of Ken and Barbie dolls being played with by an emotionally immature race of beings with no sense of morality? Or are we pawns held in the grasp of a dying race that will do anything for their own survival, including the cold-blooded manipulation of another species, we humans, and the brutal mutilation of helpless animals? Unless a person has been through the trauma of an abduction, they cannot comprehend how these entities can strip the mind and soul as easily as they can strip the clothes off a body. They scan details of a person's life with such facility that they make you feel as if you are an interesting piece of lint caught between their toes. In the blink of an eye, these beings devastate all personal freedom, all sense of privacy, and all prospects for living a normal existence. A person's life is never the same again. He or she is changed forever," close quote. Linda Porter's words speak for a lot of abductees who have interacted with grays, blondes, tall and short, reptilians, tall and short, insect humanoids, but some abductees think that they are friendly non-humans, which actually try to help people advance to more stability that will help the non-humans to survive as well. Linda Porter was the first of a half dozen people in the human abduction syndrome that I've interviewed who experienced being raised and lowered in a tube of light and passing through walls that she and other abductees say feels like 1,000 little feathers all over their body. Linda said the light tube is different from the tunnels that opened up inside of her bedroom, quote, "The beam is used only to transfer people from Earth to a craft and back. The tunnel is a physical created hole from one dimension to another. Traveling through the tunnel was what made me ill, had something to do with the change in physical density of two differing dimensions." She told me in 1963, when she was 17 years old, that she was abducted from her Covina, California home by gray-colored beings with large eyes. These gray beings seem to be the extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBENs, that are described in leaked documents from our government as friendly and concerned about Earth and human evolution, although I can tell you that in 83 to 84, I received a card like a Christmas card, innocent and benign, it seemed, and inside were handwritten words. The EBENs are our allies, ... but they lie. That's how schizophrenic all this is. Linda Porter was shown a procedure to transfer the soul or the life force from a dying man into a healthy younger clone of the man Linda could see in one of the cloning resurrection tubes. The gray being told Linda telepathically that the same soul transfer would be done with her. The gray explained to her that she had rheumatic fever as a teenager that damaged her heart. The gray non-human said it was vital that Linda Porter's soul entity continue in the same genetic body container she had been born with in order to accomplish an unknown alien agenda. Linda saw rise out of the top of the dead man's spine a golden yellow-orange light that elongated in the air as it came out of his back of his neck at the top of the spine, moved across the room to a row of body-sized tubes lighted from top and bottom and filled with a strange purple-looking gas. Inside the tube on the far right was a clone body of the same man, but about 10 years younger, she thought. Linda Porter said that there was a problem about Earth body containers, souls, other dimensions, and altered timelines. And she said, quote, I was told that the resurrected cloned man would be relocated elsewhere, maybe Australia, and would continue on with his life, while the body that she saw die in the presence of the gray and a praying mantis would be allowed to die in his Midwestern town, and a funeral and a burial would take place. So in the United States, he would be a dead person. In Australia, he would be a clone, a rapid cycle clone, continuing to live a combination of that container and that soul for reasons known only to the non-humans. Linda thought it was vital to the EBENs that the man's soul continue functioning longer inside the same kind of container that his older sick body had been. And she thought that part of the reason that they take tissue samples from abductees when they are quite young is to have this tissue in reserve in case a new body for an abductee becomes necessary later on. She said, I got the impression the aliens do not like to do this soul transfer very often. Actually, I got the feeling the aliens are not supposed to be doing this at all, but they seem to be backed into a corner and have no other recourse. They also seem to be trying to hide all of this from some higher form of life, whatever the authority is that prohibits this soul transfer. Also prohibits the ETs from interfering on this planet, but they are interfering. I remember her saying that to me, but they are interfering. Whoever it is much higher evolved than they are and wields a great deal of power over many, many other realms of existence. There is much, much more to existence than we could ever begin to understand. Much of what we have been taught regarding the physical universe and the laws that govern it is wrong. The EBEN doing the soul transfer from her diseased body to her new clone body in one of the lighted tubes gave Linda Porter an overview of how the cosmos is constructed from the EBEN point of view. The universe is built on sound patterns, which is why so many different worlds, dimensions can exist in the same space. Each is on a different frequency. Disrupt a world dimension to the point that you destroy the carrier wave it exists on, and you have created a hole in existence that cannot support the dimension above or below it. Each frequency, besides maintaining its own world dimension, also supports or holds in place the one above it and below it. Everything is interdependent. There are countless world dimensions occupying the same space without being aware of one another because of having their own individual octaves. This octave frequency holds the world dimension in place and causes it to exist safely without interfering with or even being aware of other worlds around it. This frequency acts as a buffer zone to keep everything in its place. But you do anything to disrupt it, and you begin a collapse that starts a deadly chain reaction. If the density of this collapse reaches a certain weight, space-time itself begins to collapse. Atomic and hydrogen bombs physically tear into other dimensions. And whatever the experiment is that our government is involved with in outer space, whatever it is, we don't know. If successful, it will change the density of matter to such an extent that the chain reaction started will not be able to be stopped by anybody in any world dimension. There are literally hundreds of different alien life forms here trying to stop what is happening, as it is putting their own worlds at risk. Some, as I had mentioned in earlier letters, are not supposed to be interfering, but they are doing so anyway. What they are all trying to do is stop the ripple effect that will emanate outward from Earth should this government's experiment succeed. But with all their technology, why don't the aliens or their superiors just walk in and stop the whole thing themselves? Why do they need us abductees to speak for them? Something just does not make any sense. I want
to bring someone else into our conversation, Ben, if I can. So stand by for a second. Mark Berry is a retired Las Vegas Metro Police officer who's also been working with Ben on investigating this case. So Mark, you're the perfect person to ask about this piece that involves the so-called, Metro Vegas police going to the house days after this crash, a couple of sergeants, a couple of investigators, the family reports, and they didn't exist. The Metro Police are saying we didn't. Do we believe the Metro Police when they say they didn't? Or do we think that somebody did show up dressed as them?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Metro's a great organization. Their officers are some of the most finely trained officers in the world. And, they handled it, in my book, they pretty much did what they could as patrol officers. The fact that the family said some sergeants came in afterwards and put up cameras, that's not protocol in any kind of unit within the department. We're not going to do that. Basically, when you show up on scene, once you gain that real estate, you're not going to give it up. So if you need to call in criminalistics, if you need to call in detectives, if you need to call in another unit, you're going to do that, but you're going to remain on scene, probably, start a perimeter or something like that. These officers, I'm not going to discount the story. They had no reason not to believe, other than, it's pretty out there when you hear about the descriptions, but they're there to look and get to the bottom of it as fast as they can. And they did go out back. They did see some, I guess you could call it evidence, but I also have dove into this a little bit besides talking to the officers involved. I used some of my air assets and were able to look out in the back of the yard and see the circular impressions that they were talking about. And in that backyard, there's a number of trailers, a number of flatbeds, And the circular impressions are very indicative of rear wheel tracking. So if you drive through a puddle, your front tires make a mark, your back tires are going to make another mark. So you're going to have two separate circles. And if you can see, it's the same depth and the same width of the other vehicle tracks that are going around that shed. So to me, it looks very indicative of a vehicle track, and those are back rear wheel tracking.
Well, that would be a logical explanation for the naysayers to say there's always an explanation for this. So thank you for bringing that part up about those mysterious circles in the backyard. But Mark, you also spent some time staked out. Like, you staked out to see if you could get a read on this family. The family has ghosted everybody. They're not responding to interviewers that they made appointments with. They're not responding to telephone calls. I don't even know if they're in the house anymore. But what was your read when you were parked out front for hours and hours?
Yeah, so I'll admit, I drive a black SUV.
Okay, there you go. We can explain the black SUVs away now.
I do not wear black government-issued sunglasses, so there's a little difference there. I have talked to some of the neighbors. I have been able to confirm noise, the big giant boom that the.
Well, you made it through part 5, and I hope you're interested to see part 6. The clip you just saw is of Newsmax following up an investigation on Angel and his family after the UFO incident occurred. They are speaking with a retired Las Vegas detective, a Mark Berry. I have a logical question that one has to ask. Why would a detective, or for that matter a retired one, be staking out a home, and I quote the reporter again, for hours and hours, where a strange 911 call came from regarding a young man seeing non-human beings in his backyard? Wouldn't a retired detective or police officer of any kind be able to contact his sources at his old department that employed him to find out if the claims the family made were true? And I quote the reporter's own words. A couple of sergeants, a couple of investigators that supposedly went through the house after the night of the incident. This is certainly not the protocol of the police in any jurisdiction, and he went even further using the words he used some of his inner assets to investigate the backyard circle. He stated he was then speaking with their neighbors. Once again, this is odd, as this would have taken place from non-retired law enforcement on scene the night of the incident. I'm sure you, like myself, would find it very disturbing to witness a black SUV parked outside your home. Most people would call what he described as stalking, unless the family gave him permission to be there performing an investigation. We'll now let him finish his clip. I look forward to seeing you at the release of part 6.
Main camera had caught one part of the valley, but there's some more issues with the backyard. Again, I don't want to discount what they're saying, but the house has been dark. There has been no movement in and out other than onlookers going, by the house real slow, taking pictures. As far as movement in the house itself or in the rear, the backyard, or even in the trailers, it's been dark. And it's been dark for the last few days. So I'm sure that they may have left town. But, I don't know. They may just be laying low.
And Mark, I'll tell you, there's a perfectly good explanation. They're freaking out over all this attention, and so they amscrayed, or as others would say, they've been taken by the government and they're being hidden away and interrogated. I mean, this is what the internet's lighting up about.